Another episode, Gonzaga Nation SI. Today's guest, one of the most connected in the world of basketball, especially at this time of year, because from what I can tell and the conversations that we've had in the past, the passion of his is the NBA draft and the lead up to the draft. He's got experience on the agent side. He's got experience in the front office side. He's even spent some time as a coach, none other than Matt Babcock. Matt, thanks for joining.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me.
So, talked about the three angles that you've worked in professional basketball. Give us a little bit about your coaching, because if I'm not mistaken, it was a short stint. Why did you decide or enjoy the front office or evaluation side more?
I grew up in basketball. As you know, my dad, my two uncles have all worked in the NBA for a long time. But before my dad started working in the front office for the Milwaukee Bucks, he was a college coach for until I was 13 or 14 years old. So grew up as a coach's son and really wanted to follow in his footsteps. And knew I wanted to work in basketball. And so I was a player. I was a walk-on at the University of Arizona, and my first full-time job was a development coach for Virtus Bologna team in Italy. And when I got over there, part of it, I was a little homesick living in Italy as a young guy, but really didn't like the regimented schedules that, kind of comes with being an assistant coach. And it's just a grind. And I was always really attracted to the draft, just kind of, being a fly on the wall in my dad's office or my uncle's offices, and scouting meetings, and going tagging along when they scouted games, and fell into the agency business. I was a sports agent for 10 years, and really it was just young guy just trying to get as good a job as I possibly could, when I was in my early 20s, and did that for 10 years and realized, hey, you know what, I need to get back to closer to my roots, working directly in basketball, which I really felt like my true calling was scouting and evaluating talent.
Well, this is the time of year where everybody thinks they have an eye for talent. Everybody thinks that they're a true scout and an evaluator. But what most average fans don't understand and realize is many times for a guy that is about to get drafted here at the end of the month, scouts like yourself have been looking at and kind of mining information sometimes for a couple of years. Is that true? And how much detailed information and kind of processing notes and evaluations go into a prospect?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot. For example, last week I was in Colorado Springs for USA Basketball had a 16 under mini camp for their team they just put together. And they're all these kids were 15, 16 years old. And so myself and pretty much, I think probably a scout from each team in the league had somebody there. And so, yeah, we're going to start early on these guys, 15, 16 years old. And then, I think now there's so much information that's publicly accessible, film and whatnot. And so you get a lot of these independent scouts. I think the one difference, from an NBA standpoint is the amount of intel gathering that's put into this. And, that's a huge part of what we're doing. I run the NBA draft for Cerebro Sports, which is a scouting service. And essentially we're just gathering information on all these kids' backgrounds and, trying to figure out, what makes them tick. And so that's a huge part of it too. And obviously the medical testing as well during this time, which, not everybody gets access to that as well. So the on-court talent is just part of the equation. And there's a lot of work to be done by these teams.
I think it's pretty safe to say, at least from what I can tell, what I've read, clips I've watched, there's a consensus top three. Victor Wembanyama going to be the number one pick. If he's not, I would be shocked. Then I think it's Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson, depending on, really who is picking it too, what fits them. Do they have a trade that comes up? Do you agree with those as the top three consensus? And then after that, who might be called next?
Yeah, my personal board, I have Victor number one, like everyone else, and then I have Scoot Henderson slightly ahead of Brandon Miller. But yeah, I agree that that's the consensus top three. And right after that, I'd probably put the Thompson twins from Overtime Elite. I think I'd probably give Amen Thompson a slight edge over Asar. But that's that first group for me.
Well, this is a Gonzaga-centric podcast, as you know, and so lots of listeners are going to be interested in Drew Timme and Julian Strawther, what they did or did not show and do at the NBA Combine in Chicago a couple weeks back, as well as what their prospects are. Now, Timmy played in the 5-on-5 games. Julian Strawther did not. What goes into the decision-making process for a player like Julian to not play in Chicago?
I mean, this time of year, agents are doing their stuff, right? Playing games, trying to control the narrative as much as possible. I don't know anything specifically of why Julian didn't play. I would have liked to see him play. I mean, as I would pretty much any guy. But I think with both of these players, at this point, I mean, we've all scouted them so much. I mean, they're veteran college players, and I personally, try not to do, a knee jerk reaction on evaluation. So if a guy plays really well or plays poorly in one game, I mean, if you do your job well, it shouldn't sway you too much. I think it's usually a bigger stage for guys that aren't as well known. I mean, last year, Jalen Williams from Santa Clara really moved the needle for himself. And I think part of it was, staffs as a whole probably didn't know him quite as well as the guy like Drew Timme, who we've seen on such a big stage for, 4 years. So yeah, I mean, I didn't look at it as a make or break for either one of those guys.
When you see how Drew Timme performed, the clips that I watched for the small stretches, he did Drew Timme things. Now his game it's not like cut and paste. You go to the NBA, you're going to have success. He's got to acclimate his skill set to the NBA game. What are his biggest obstacles right now in a front office's mind?
Yeah, I mean, the college game and the NBA game have really changed in recent years. I mean, it changed from one another. I think the college game hasn't changed at all. It's the same. The NBA is evolving. I mean, it's so spread out. Floor spacing, comes on a premium right now, even with big guys. And with Drew Timme, I mean, he's your classic low post scorer. And so I think he's going to have to adapt to the NBA. And so, I mean, seeing him in a game at the combine, I mean, he did well. I mean, he's got a knack to put the ball in the hole. I think what's going to be interesting is he going to be able to step into a smaller role in the NBA and be effective enough to stick. And I think a big part of that is on the defensive end. I mean, is he going to be able to keep up with the higher speed and more floor spacing? And so time will tell. He'll get his shot. But I mean, I think the evaluation continues even after he gets in the league.
I've said that Drew Timme to me would be a curveball in the NBA because there's very few players that score on the low block and he is not doing it at the NBA level yet, but I would imagine with some time, he would be a problem to defend down there. He's almost a curveball, but that curveball would have to fit within a front office's and a coaching staff's philosophy about how you want to build your second unit. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, no, I think he needs to find somebody that believes in him. Obviously, I mean that goes for any player, and I do believe you could put him in an NBA game and he'll do Drew Timme things. Like you mentioned, he's just really got a knack of putting the ball in the hole, even if it comes within the flow of the game. I don't think he necessarily needs sets run for him like it was at Gonzaga. So yeah, the defensive end to me is the big question mark, and obviously if he's able to improve his outside shooting and make that a bigger part of his game, that would help his upside as well.
So you build out some different mock drafts leading up to the draft. Where do you have Julian Strawther and Drew Timme slotted if they are to be drafted? Where do you expect them to go?
Yeah, with Julian, I've got him at 49 right now, which might be on the low end for him. I think in the second round specifically, that there's a lot of wings, and so I think it's really going to come to teams looking at these versatile big wings. It's just what's your preference? I mean, I think there's a grouping of a handful of guys or more that you could probably debate of how you rank them and whatnot, and so we'll see how it plays out. But I think he's probably a solid second round pick somewhere. Timme, I've got him, towards the end of the second round. He could go higher, but he could also go undrafted. I think he's somewhat polarizing, depending on who you're talking to. How much do you value what he does well, compared to what his deficiencies are.
There's two other players out of the WCC that have been on draft boards. One of them was on board since the start of the year, and that's Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine. The other, Brandon Pajimski, was from Santa Clara, was literally an unknown, only averaged about a point a game at Illinois before going to Santa Clara. What are you hearing about both of those guys? Because I've been impressed with both of them, probably Pajimski more than Maxwell Lewis, although I both think they'll be drafted. What do you see?
Yeah, they both have a lot of buzz, and they've had a lot of buzz all year. Both are sort of analytics sweethearts, if you will. And yeah, Max Lewis, I mean, very long wing, shot the ball well this year. He's looking like he's got a chance of being a first round pick. And with Podziemski, he was terrific at the combine, just a really tough, well rounded guard. Does a little bit of everything. It's interesting he didn't play much his freshman year at Illinois. That's sort of mind-boggling, but great year. Has gotten some interest in the first round. I personally see him more as a solid second, but yeah, both these guys, even though they're coming from a smaller conference, look like they're in a good spot.
Well, Matt, appreciate the time. I know you got lots of other media requests going on right now. You got lots of evaluation assignments on your board. So thanks for carving out some time for us today.
No, Dan, really appreciate it.